Hi, guys. Cecile Edwards here of the Mommy Matters podcast. I have to tell you, if you have not heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Did I tell you that you can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership? It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download your Anchor app or go to Anchor FM, anchor.fm to get started. You will not be dissatisfied. Welcome to the Mommy Matters podcast, where Mommy Matters is a double entendre that states and declares that mommies matter, where we have conversations surrounding mommy matters, from conception to pregnancy to postpartum, mother and father wounds, dating, mindfulness and self-care, spirituality, parenting, discipline, legislation, money, and so much more. It is my hope and my prayer that the information that you gather here serves as a blueprint for generational and individual ascension. Enjoy. So welcome to the Mommy Matters podcast, where we discuss all things mommy. And today's topic and subject is healing ourselves, healing our children. And I am honored to have our guest of Soul Centered Mama, Miss Violet Moon, who is going to talk to us about various aspects of healing ourselves and the interaction between healing ourselves and raising our children at the same time. And so, Mommy Evolve is very much so about having that interaction of mothering yourself and understanding what that means, taking care of yourself, and really reflecting and thinking about how that affects how you interact with your children, how you teach them lessons, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to dive a little bit more deeply into that. But before we do that, let us speak with Miss Violet Moon. Hi, Violet.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here today.
I am glad to have you. Thank you so much for agreeing and being punctual and being here. That means something. That's how you know you're an organized mama, okay?
Well, I try my best, but with these 5 humans that are just here all the time, or sometimes organized just looks like I need a nap and I'm going to go nap today.
That's a beautiful thing. I napped so long yesterday I couldn't sleep last night. I was like, oh well. It's like,
I love it. That's what happens. Yes.
So, Violet, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your business, Soul Center Mama, and what you do. And yeah.
Yay. Okay. So what Soul Centered Mama is about helping mothers connect back into themselves and find alignment with themselves and who they are, so that they can learn how to pretty much release the stories and things that they've been carrying for, I don't even know how long we carry things for, that can hinder what they want to create with their children. So it's really about helping them align and release what's not theirs, so that they can be pretty much the best mama to their ability with what they have at the moment. But the interesting thing about it is that it usually goes so much deeper than just that. Whenever I tell anyone that, it seems like it's just that stuff, but it's usually always multi-layered things that come in. And what I do through Soul Centered Mama is that I provide services in order to help them gain a deeper understanding and bridge the connection between the spirit world and their spiritual selves and their actual earthbound selves, in order for them to connect the pieces and really get down into the core of what those things are that are causing like autoreactions and things that keep them from gaining that alignment space with themselves that they will, in turn give to their children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I remember when I spoke to you before on the phone, and you were just so spot on with what was rustling inside of me in terms of, me. It all just came down to me and my personal belief in myself, and you like were able to hit that spot head on like immediately. And
Yeah.
so, it really does come down to what is going on with your soul and what it is that you need to become aware of,
Yes.
because, we say that we need to release what is not ours, but there's so much that is not ours that oftentimes
Yes.
just our awareness makes us able to switch gears and switch thought process in the moment that we see that something is happening that we know we don't want to carry with us. Right?
Yes.
If that
Yes.
makes sense. So how long have you been doing this work, and what made you come into doing this work?
Well, I started this work on my own and for my family and my children, and it started off. I'd say my oldest is 13 now, so I started with myself. Like I've been doing the work that I do because Soul Centered Mama helps moms align, but my part in Soul Centered Mama is the spiritual part. And what I do is that as I said before, I connect the spiritual stuff with the everyday stuff. So my part started when my oldest was, I'd like to say, about 4 or 5 years old, when I started to realize that I was parenting on autopilot when she was little. And yes, I was autopilot, and what happened was that I started to realize that a lot of the things that she was that were coming up and a lot of the things that she was like demonstrating to me were coming from a deeper place, and I had to understand. And I remember thinking to myself when she was really little, okay, I want my daughter to want to be close to me, but she's not, and at that time it was just really hurtful because you want your kids to be close to you. You want your kids to want you. You want your kids, obviously that's like a double-edged sword because as we were, speaking about a little while ago, we do have to find balance, and then that's
right.
A whole nother topic.
A healthy closeness so that
exactly.
they're not dependent. Yes.
Yes. But I realized that what was happening was the opposite. And in that time, I remember thinking, okay, she's like this with me, but my mom, who was actually taking care of her at that time, she was not like that with my mom. So I'm like, okay, then this is something that has to do with me. And I'm like super duper uber like introspective person, like that is just my personality. So everything I sort of turn it around and take it into myself. And I was like, okay, so if she's not like this with my mom, but she's like this with me, that means that there's something I'm doing that's causing her to have this reaction with me. So that kind of started me on the path of saying, there is something going on that I have to really get to the core of so that I can turn around because it's not working. What I'm doing is not working. And it started up my personal journey in that sense. And then for other people, I say I started doing the work that I started on my end. I started helping other moms do, I'd say 4 years ago. About 4 to 5 years ago, I started doing it professionally. And then the spiritual stuff really came in about 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, I'd say. So it's been like an evolution.
Right. That's basically what happens. Because with me, similar thing started with my realization of how my relationship with my own mother had affected my parenting or my conceptualization of parenting.
Yes.
And then then I realized how my just natural pet personality was interacting with my parenting. So I got to understand more about astrology and different things. But anyway, this is like such a integrated topic, and it's a very difficult topic for a lot of people to understand because of the way that we perceive parenting.
Yes.
So
It's
let's talk a
very
little bit about that.
multi-layered.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about that because,
Okay.
like we both said, our perception of parenting was not developed for whatever
Yes.
reason, and
Yes.
so we had this struggle and this clash with just the basic thing, which is what we assume that we should be able to do, which is nurture our children and have
Right.
this with them. Why do you think that is? What do you think that is on a societal level, maybe in a family? How does this lack of awareness come about, if that makes sense?
Sure. Yeah. So I think that, just to start off with, I think that somewhere along the line, I know where, but I don't want to like get too deep because people are going to be like, what? But it really
Get as
comes
deep as you want. There's going to be people who will definitely understand.
That's very true. That's absolutely true. But a lot of it comes from the simple fact that we are not taught, whether it's culturally, society, or generationally, we are not taught to have awareness. We are taught to obey. We are taught to do, and we are taught to create things. Right. So we are taught to be as functional as possible and to get things done versus allowing awareness to come into our spheres, if you will. And because of this, we do live in a society where production is valued, right? Production is valued above everything else. And that's really sort of the undercurrent of a lot of things. And when you take into consideration that production is very valued, like it comes down to everything. Like, the mom that we perceive to have it together is the mom whose house is clean, the mom whose children are well-mannered, the mom whose children look all polished, the mom who never screams. Like we are taught to be productive. So when all of these other things come in that don't feel like being productive or leading to production, that make you stop and make you sort of have to function on a very basic human level, we automatically want to stop those things.
Right.
And what ends up happening is that the truth of reality is in those moments. Yeah. So what ends up happening is that we treat our children in the same way. It's like, a lot of the times, and these are things, as I said before, they are auto reactions and they come without us really paying attention to them. They're just things that were taught to us and we're just like, boom, okay, this is just the way I'm going to react, So, for instance, if our child is struggling with something, our natural reaction is to say, well, stop that because right now I don't have time to do this with you because I have to cook a dinner. I have to make a meal. I have to do this. Our auto reactions are, ain't nobody got time for that. But realistically speaking, in that moment, there's something going on there that we need to take care of. But because it doesn't match our productivity and where we think we have to go, we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to handle it. And it is a learned behavior, if you will, to not focus on those things. It's a learned behavior on more level than one to not stop and actually become aware enough to see what's happening in the moment. Because I have to do this right now. I have to do that right now. I have to make dinner. We have to run over here. We have to stop here and do this. We have to stop and do that. And it's really funny because as I was telling you a moment ago, it took me 3 hours to leave my house a few days ago. And, we
were going to the whole place away. Like, I don't even want to go no more.
Exactly. And it took us 3 hours and it was like, okay, it's going to take us 3 hours. I didn't set out for it to take us 3 hours, but it's because I had to keep stopping and doing things along the way. Now, of course, I was aggravated because I was like, okay, oh Jesus, I just want to get here. Can we just get here? But in between, people needed food. People were, disagreeing. People were having arguments. I had to stop this one from fighting. I had to do this. So it's all of these things where once we get into ourselves to, it's a constant reminder of right now and what's happening now matters more than what I think matters. And it's about allowing ourselves the awareness to say, okay, I'm going to stop for a moment and figure this out. Because what happens is that we've become very used to glossing things over so that we can get to the next place.
Yes.
And in that space of glossing things over consistently, or trying to get to whatever destination we're getting to, whether that's leaving or cooking or cleaning or sweeping or creating or, all of these other things, we're consistently telling ourselves that what's happening isn't important without even realizing it. But more than that, we're modeling to our children that what they have going on also isn't important. And when that translates to them is, your feelings don't matter, what you have going on doesn't matter, but I'm going to teach you, which again is where we started, I'm going to teach you how to react in this circumstance instead.
Right.
And this is where our auto reactions kick in. So we're modeling these things consistently because we don't stop anymore to say, okay, what is it? What's happening?
Mm-hmm. Yes to everything. Okay. Because again, these are things that I had to see within myself.
Yes.
In order to really be, because you got to be honest with your own self, right? In order to bring that honesty to other people. And, as you're talking, it makes me realize how we deaden our children's emotional IQ. And that many times when we are when you see a conflict between parents and children, it's because the children oftentimes, they don't feel heard. They don't feel seen. They don't feel validated, all of those things.
Absolutely.
And so when you see them acting out in any sort of way, that's typically, what is happening with them. And again, I had to look back on my own life, because that's part of, being a mother, is healing that inner child and understanding that, what happened to you as a child and how that needs to be brought to your awareness and rectified. But I realized in my own childhood that that's the reason why, I am, in certain areas the way that I am.
Right.
And then now trying to unravel all of those things. And when it comes back to it, having worked with families that I have worked with and seen certain things, being a parent really requires you to be able to have a playful personality. I'm like, this should be a very enjoyable thing.
Exactly.
But for many people, it's not.
It's not, right.
It's not.
That's very true.
Yeah, you're fighting against being this quote unquote adult and really getting yourself in back into that childlike playful state.
Right.
It shouldn't be a struggle. I think that you should consistently, now I know that you should consistently be in that playful state.
Right.
Not adult things don't, quote unquote adult things don't come up, but that level of playfulness is. So we talked about awareness. So once awareness happens, what's next?
I think usually after awareness, I learned that the next things that have to do is we have to learn how to be silent in what we're finding and really learn how to pay attention to the stuff that's coming up so that we can allow it to deconstruct. And I think this is the hardest part for everyone, is that deconstruction, because when something is deconstructing, it's like dying away, right? So it's like we're dying to ourselves. And that's really hard for a lot of people to actually grasp, right? Because what it's doing is that it's telling you everything that you thought was a lie, everything that you believe to be true is not true. Everything that has made you who you are up to this point is not right, and that's a very difficult process to have to go through. And what we do is that when, because so many of us, as you said before, and I thought it was brilliant that you said that, because it's so true. Like, we don't have, as a societal whole, when it comes to not even to parenting, but just to ourselves, like the majority of us don't have emotional intelligence, right? So what ends up happening is that because we don't know how to understand, emotions and the emotions, especially within ourselves, what ends up happening is that these things come up, we find awareness, which is where a lot of people go backwards. You find you're like, okay, I'm going to be aware, I'm going to be in the moment. And then something happens and it forces you to question yourself. And rather than sitting with that stuff that's coming up and being forced to question, we start making excuses. We start to say, oh no, this isn't me. We start to say, well, this is your fault. If this wouldn't have happened if you would have just X, Y, and Z this, and what we do is we make excuses and we point fingers and we blame. We don't accept. We don't accept.
Or sometimes we accept and we're like, well, that's just the way it is.
Right.
Notice that too.
Right. But that's also,
like, okay.
I think, like in a deeper sense, it's also part of not accepting, because what we're doing is that we're not taking it on. We're automatically rejecting it. So by saying, it's like I don't know who said it, like someone said, by non-compliance, like by not doing something when we realize that something is wrong, we're actually complying to it. It's kind of that, if you will. So it's like we see it and then we're like, well, this is just the way that it is. You've just accepted that by not allowing yourself to say, this doesn't really make sense to me. You've automatically disassociated yourself from it, and we put ourselves in positions where we feel powerless because we're like, well, this is just the way that it's always been. I don't have the power to change this. So it all comes down to lack of really being responsible for these things. And I really do believe that just because we feel something or see it or experienced it doesn't mean that we have to continue it forever. Like, it is possible for us to change. It is possible.
I do believe that as well. Yes. And as you were just talking, I it comes down to our inability to change things. I think comes down to that production mindset still, because we think that change is going to look a certain way. Right? Like it's going to be all pretty and in a package. And, after, we're going to be like, I always use my journey to losing weight. Right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I always say we watch, what's those shows like The Biggest Loser.
Yes.
And, these different shows. I don't watch TV anymore, so I don't know what's out there, but, we see people, we see one episode and we see how people have lost 15 pounds in one episode, and we think that we're going to lose 15 pounds in one, after we just we ate one salad, so we're going to weigh ourselves.
That's so true. It's very true.
Life is not microwave as...
Nope. And it's so funny that you say that, because it's true. We've become, with the society that we now live in, everything is so instant. Everything is instant and everything is so packaged, and our cell phones, the media, the stuff we consume, the food we consume, everything is instant, like right now. So our children literally teach us to slow down. Now, whether we're going to listen or not, that's a different story. Like, you can listen today or you can listen tomorrow, but at some point you're going to have to slow down to this. And depending on when you do actually stop and slow down to it, not only is it dependent on you and your persona, but, the amount of muck that we carry the longer we go directly relates to how long it's been going on, So it's like, if we don't stop and we don't become aware of this stuff, because we just don't want to stop it all and just be instant and keep going, it really does create like a tail of things when we don't realize it, and going back to what I was saying a moment ago, it really is a product of more than like anything else, really understanding that it's a process. And sometimes after awareness happens, you might be in the next phase, which is allowing stuff to come up for understanding and clearing it out for years. And like it took me, I like to say, like, my first step was awareness. And I realized that we all go through this process. It's the same process for everyone. It just looks different for everyone, just like you said, so once I became aware of the stuff that I had going on, and the fact that my daughter was not responding to me that way that I wanted to respond to me, I think it took about 5 to 6 years for the change to completely like sit in my home, and for it to be completely different. Like, I literally sat in my home with these things to change them and face them and understand them for a good period of 5 to 6 years. It's not instant, you know, and what we do is that we don't love ourselves there. We judge ourselves there. We criticize ourselves there. We make ourselves feel bad there. We take the weight of, as you said a moment ago, what we should be doing or what it should look like. And we make it our own personal weight. We just add it to ourselves,
Right.
you know? Yeah. And that's when you see the whole mommy guilt. That's when you see us, you know, criticizing ourselves and feeling bad for ourselves. And, you know, because societally we are taught to blame each other and blame ourselves rather than nurture each other, the vast majority of us don't have people that will sit with us in our hurts. So what we do, we just go in deeper.
Say that again. Because I think this is so crucial.
Yes.
Because and I can't even say that I'm not a part of that too, because I may have done a lot of that judging in my not being aware days as well.
Yeah.
Judge mothers a lot.
Yes, we do. We do.
Everything.
For everything. And, you know, I think it's one of the things that I found interesting when I was in that process of switching everything over, and I'll say, it never ends. I mean, I've gone through that process numerous times. That was just the bulk of it. That was the bulk of it. But I've gone through the same process of awareness, destruction, allowing and acceptance. And then, because this is usually the process, you know, allowing, accepting, and then bringing in the change with our personalities, you know, and I've gone through that process numerous times over my oldest is 13, over the last 13 years, with all of them, as a matter of fact. But I've also done the same thing. I've gone to the place where I'm like, ooh, look at what she's doing over there. You know, and what we're doing ideally is that we're not owning ourselves in that space. We're not owning our perfectionism in that space. We're not owning our shortcomings. What we're doing is that we're putting it off into other people. And it's just a function, I feel, of how broken we are. And the fact that we don't know where to gather our forces from. So we're all just kind of grasping at straws, you know?
Right. I think, it's definitely a sign of how unaware of how powerful we are. It's like, you know, one of the things that I do with, you know, my clients, people that I work with, is to get them to go back to times that they trusted themselves to do certain things, so that they can remember that you just have to trust yourself in
that process.
It is going to get to where it needs to be for you.
Right.
And that is so critical for us. And as if you're a woman who has had a baby, you have experienced the most amount of trust that you could experience ever with gestating and carrying a baby.
Yes.
You don't know what's happening.
That's very true.
And then before you know it, you got a whole other human being that you are in charge of their mental, spiritual, and physical wellness.
Right.
So some trusted you to have that happen.
Right.
You know.
That's very true. And it's funny because I find that, you know, a lot of times with ourselves, we trusted our bodies and, you know, creator or whatever anyone wants to call it, and time and space to give ourselves that time, or give time that time to create this human being and create this life and create something new out of the void that is pregnancy. And yet we don't do that to ourselves so that we can give that back to them. You know, and we don't, which is where I think a lot of the, you know, this conversation started, which is where we have to give those things back to ourselves in order for us to be what we want to be, you know. And it, you know, as you said before, like that's one of your practices. One of mine is to really have my clients sit down and say, those that come to me for help with their children, it's put in your mind the scenario, like the greatest outcome that you want.
Right.
And then you allow life and time to fill those spaces in without conditions.
Yes.
Just say, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. Doesn't mean it's going to look this certain way, but just know that this is what I'm trying to create. This is what I want. And allow things to come up for reconstruction and destruction as they come up, and where I said before is also still true in this process, where it's going to come up. It's going to feel yucky and it's going to not feel good at all, but it's going to lead you into another place. And it's like, we just have to allow that space to refill us with other things. But just really understanding that in that time, we have to care for ourselves. We have to be good to ourselves. We have to fill with ourselves the things that are going to make us feel good and nurtured, and know that we're worthy of it, so that we can put this back into these humans that have come into for us to take care of.
That is so critical. That's self-care.
Yeah.
And I always say, we always go to the cookie cutter thing of self-care. When we're going through these processes, these are emotional and spiritual processes.
Yes.
So it's going to require emotional and spiritual things to fill up that, right? We often go to the physical, but I always say the getting the hair and the nails done, which is great. It makes you feel good temporarily, but listening to and satiating your desires for yourself is going to be what's going to fill you up even more, because that is what's going to make you trust yourself even more.
Yeah,
right? That's going to make you trust spirit even more, and the universe even more.
Right. In order for us to get to that next place,
for you to be filled up to get to those next place, and to really
exactly
and love yourself
and love yourself.
And listen, even though I am, considered, the self-care person, it took me some time to get it. And you don't know how many people told me the same thing over and over and over again. And I was like, but
it's very true. And the interesting thing is that I love that you said that, we go to the same auto stuff, like, oh, mani-pedi, but self-care sometimes means something as simple as, I'm going to let myself cry for an entire day because my inner child needs to cry. I'm hurt. I want to cry. Self-care sometimes means, you know what? I don't want to do these flipping dishes today. I'm going to leave them in the sink because I'm going to run myself ragged. And, because we have, as I was saying before, this is the part where it starts to get really involved, right? We have all of these stories and auto reactions that just come on wire and we don't realize them. So self-care may be something as simple as, I'm not doing these freaking dishes, because we have what's been given to us moms is this feeling that we have to be all, do all for everyone except for ourselves. We have to be the martyrs. We have to be this, and we have this 1950s housewife model in the back of our minds that says, in order for you to be a good mom, your kitchen has to be spotless. Mine isn't. It's, and we have this thing where it's like, well, in order for me to be a good mom, my house has to be spotless. My children have to be what I said in the beginning, this, that, or the other. And we run ourselves ragged chasing these stories of what it is that we're supposed to be doing and what we're supposed to look like, and to me, one of the most freeing things, and it's funny because if I tell people, like, normally they're going to be like, what? But for me, one of the most freeing things, and I remember it like it was today, I was in my kitchen and I grew up with my mom. My mom had like a job. My mom worked. My kids and my sister and I went to school. My mom worked. And my mom's house, she came from like the Caribbean. We're Dominican. In the Caribbean.
My family's from Jamaica. So listen,
honey, so
spotlessness. Yes.
Your house is spotless. Yes. You can see from like the front part of, like, somebody walks by and they can see into your entire house. So because of that, there's this thing where your house has to be spotless and you cook all your meals and all this other stuff. So we grew up with my mother, literally, my mother tells me, she's alive still, and she says, like, I didn't think I was going to make it past 35 the way that I had to live my life in order for me to like raise you guys and make money and, you know, keep everything going. You know, even now she says it, like she has arthritis, and she says this arthritis is due to the way that I lived my life when you guys were little, because of what I thought I had to do. So, you know, my mom, she now, like, she lives, obviously she's like, I'm not doing that stuff no more. But it took her years to get to that space. But I grew up watching my mother keep a spotless house after coming home at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, make us dinner, because we literally ate everything in home. Like, we didn't eat out. Like, to us, eating out was a treat that happened once a month or something. It wasn't something we did. We ate every single meal out of my mother's kitchen. I grew up thinking that in order for me to be a good mom, my kids had to eat every single meal. And this is like a sub story underneath another story, underneath another story. And I thought that for my kids to be balanced and whatever else I put into it, every meal had to come out of my kitchen, you know, and everything had to be cooked, and it had to be a production. It had to be a this and that. And I had a moment of clarity one day where I was like, you know what? I don't have to make this big, huge meal for dinner tonight. Like, it doesn't have to be rice and beans and chicken. Why can't they eat like grilled cheeses with soup?
Thank you.
Why can't I make like,
cereal?
You know, tuna?
Listen.
Why can't they have some cereal? And I'm telling you, this was like, seriously, this was like 2 years ago. Yeah. About 2 years ago. And it took me years of undoing all this stuff, you know, and I didn't realize I wasn't taking care of myself, because I thought everything had to be done from scratch out of my kitchen. And this is something that, you know, for 7 people, I'm in the kitchen a lot, okay? There's 7 of us. I'm in the kitchen all the time. So when I had this realization, it blew my mind. I was like, what? These people can have cereal for dinner sometimes? Like, they want pancakes today, and I don't have to make like rice and beans with like, you know, plantains on the side and salad and all this stuff. You know, like, I was like, whoa. All right, children, you're having like tuna today. What kind of tuna you want? You want PB&J today? And that set me free. But I wasn't taking care of myself before that point. I was running myself ragged. And self-care in that moment was simply, I don't have to cook a big meal.
Right.
You know, but it's, as I said, we have all of these stories of these things that are running us, and all of these labels, and we don't realize that they're happening. But what we do realize is the feeling of unsatisfaction. You realize the feelings of resentment. Like, I tell people, if you feel resentment, that means there's something that you're doing that's not lining up with who you are and what you want. Resentment is an indication that you're not living according to your own standards.
Yes.
I was, a whole heck of a lot resenting all those meals. But it was because I was telling myself that I had to do that.
Yep, absolutely. I have had a similar situation, but I think that for me, things more so came to a head when I got married, because I was a single parent.
Right.
That adds even more stress and pressure. Let me just say. So I get that, you know, mentality of many single parents that don't want to ask for help and things like that.
It's like a badge of honor.
Appear, exactly, especially when we're growing up in these times, or we're seeing these times when there's so many single parent households.
Yes.
And but my wake up call, quite frankly, was getting married and realizing that my husband would say to me, you know, if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. But I always felt like I needed to do it. You know what I'm saying? And I really started to observe the males in males, period. Right? So you have the ones that don't mind cleaning, they'll clean and do stuff. You have ones that ain't going to do it. And then you have ones that'll just pay somebody to do it for them. Right?
Can we find some of those everywhere? Like, let's pay people.
Right. But that's the point that I've gotten to, because I'm just like, I simply don't want to do it. I have no time for it.
Exactly.
So I just leave it. And I do things when I feel like doing it. And that's it, including cooking.
That's it.
I don't do anything that I don't feel like doing. I'm not doing it. Period.
You're not doing it. And that is a really huge form of self-care, because at the core of it, self-care is about caring for yourself and caring for yourself spiritually, emotionally, and physically, so that you can bring forth the best version of yourself.
Yes.
We cannot be the best version of ourselves when we're running ourselves ragged on all of these other layers.
What we feel like, don't feel like doing. But again, as you said, we learn it in society. We go to jobs that are 9 to 5, even though we know daggone well by 12 o'clock we done all the work we need to do. So we just sitting there for 5 hours, 6 hours.
That is so true. You know, what's funny is this is how, you know, and our children teach us about these things even when we're not paying attention, and even when we're even when they're in womb, like in utero, right? So here's a funny story. I remember, now that you say that, with these 9 to 5s. So my sons, when I was pregnant with my twins, I have twins. When I was pregnant with my twins, I eventually stopped working because, you know, I had twins and all that other stuff. But I remember one day sitting at my desk, and I was, you know, very corporate. I had a desk and all this other stuff. And I remember sitting there one day, and I was exhausted. Like, pregnancy with twins is exhausting.
I can imagine.
You know, and, oh, you bring me coffee. Thank you. And I was very pregnant with my twins. And I remember thinking, it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I remember thinking, I'm done for the day. I'm tired. I want a nap. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I remember thinking, now I don't recommend anyone to do this. I'm just, you know, I'm just saying, I'm just giving you guys a story.
It's your story. Okay. Don't be going to work and be like, I'm done.
I was done. I was done. And I remember thinking, I was pregnant with my twins, and I remember thinking, I just can't do this anymore. I can't adult anymore. I'm tired. I still have 2 small kids, because when I was pregnant with my twins, my daughters were only 2 and 3. And it just, like, at one point I had 4 kids under 4. Like, I went through the ringer, you know. And I remember thinking, that's it, I'm done. And I went into, like, the executive's office, and I said, listen, I've done all the work that I had to do for the day, and I'm going home. And this man looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but I was serious. He could tell that I was serious, you know. And I said, I've done all the work that I've had to do. I have to leave. And he was like, okay. And I left, like, I then left. And it was because, like, now granted, again, that was created and cultivated through this twin pregnancy. Because before that, I was
looking like, look, mommy, you got to go.
You gotta go. And they're like that now, which I find really amusing. Like, my twins, if it's not serving them, they're not doing it.
And that's children in general. And yes. And one of the things that I learned from the children, also just from, you know, my own child, as well as children that I, you know, care for as a caregiver, like, they'll do stuff, but it has to be fun.
Yes, it
like,
does.
All right, I'll clean up, but can I have fun cleaning up?
Can we play?
Like, everything gotta be, and I think that that's a huge part of our unraveling of ourselves too. We have to stop everything drudgery.
Yes.
You know? It's like the conversation that we hear all the time, where people, you know, when they're just in a relationship, they're all happy and fun or whatever, and then they get married and they're like boring.
And it's all boring. And it's like, well, we become
so serious stuff because of that label. You know what I'm saying? So the label of work has this idea attached to it. The label of cleaning has this idea attached to it. Because, you know, when I do clean and I feel like doing, I put some music on and be, you know, working in the meantime. Like, you know.
Exactly.
So
that's
another
Yeah. And our children, and they do teach us that. They really do teach us that when we stop and we, you know, pay attention. And because we've bought into the idea that in order for us to get things done, it has to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
You know, and I read this book called The Continuum Concept a while back. And the author of the book, I don't know her name, but it's a pretty good book. In it, she talks about this idea of, you know, it's a book about children and how children in the Western world are seen versus like in tribes. So what she did was that she traveled and she went to different tribes of like the Amazon, of Mexico, like deep tribes. And she created, you know, this book called The Continuum Concept. And she's saying that in the book, she says that what she learned from living with these tribes, like it literally blew her open, like completely. It unraveled her. And in one of the parts of the book, she says how in the Western world, we see work as something that is like drudgery. It kills our soul. It kills our spirits. You think of work and a job, and within instantly, without even realizing it, we already start dimming.
Yeah.
Like without even realizing, you already started dimming yourself. Like, oh, got to get up. Monday suck. This and that, and in the book, she says that one of the things that really changed her mind about everything was that she was with these tribes, and they were like carrying these big, heavy, things. And while she and the other people that came along to the trip with her from the Western world were having like this miserable time, oh, this wood is heavy, this sucks, can't believe they're making us do this, the people from the tribe were just like happily moving along and just carrying their bricks and like laughing with each other and having fun with each other. And she said that what she realized was that they were taught that it was just by watching the children, they were taught that it was just part of what they did, and they could laugh at that time. They could have fun at that time. It didn't have to be to meet a deadline. She said that at one point it became so heavy or something happened that she had to stop. And they actually, rather than, she looked at the tribes people, and she thought that what they were going to look back at her and be like, oh, come on, you're wasting our time, we gotta go. She said they looked at her and they were like, okay, it's fine, just take your time, we'll wait for you. And it was like, it wasn't a big deal. It was like, okay, that's fine, you do what you gotta do, and then when you're done, we'll continue. There was no timeline on it, there was no pressure, there was no stress. It just was her.
That's it.
Just doing it, and our kids, as you said, which is why I started talking about this, they do the same. They do those things up to a certain age. I've realized that, they do start to get our conditions after a certain age, but up until maybe 4, they live their lives in the same exact way. It's like everything is fun. Everything is playful. We're going to clean the couch. We're going to throw ourselves across the couch and leap like Batman while we take this toy from here to the toy chest. Like, yes, let's do it this way.
Exactly. I had to play a whole princess game with one little girl so she could clean up her room. Got it cleaned up. I was like, well, this was definitely my introduction into being more playful in my life. And I said that that's what I wanted in my life, and this is what
and I've got more playfulness. Yes. And these are the things that once we start to allow ourselves to see, these are the things that we can find again back to ourselves. But, it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, which is we have to allow ourselves to say, yes, there can be another way. Yes, I will allow myself to find the awareness and couple that with taking care of myself so that I can actually get to see what you're doing and allow you to be who you are in that space. So let's do this another way. Fine, let's find the fun.
Those are so great. Those are great intentions and affirmations.
Yes.
Let me find the fun throughout my day. Let me just be able to be and find joy. And that's one of my power words for this year is joy. It's so critical that we see that our children happy and just
and that they enjoy these things.
Because when we think about a lot of older women in our lives, when we think about, I don't know if we really saw them really just happy, just joyful about themselves and about life. And I really have to think about it.
Yes.
To really get, context.
Right. It's a very hard thing to find because I think that especially with a lot of the immigrants, right? There's different, I don't want to say categories, I'll say perceptions according to where your background is, right? So with a lot of immigrants, we being, our families came into this country in order to do something, to produce something, because our countries didn't have whatever it was. So we came here with the intentions of producing and doing. And in that space, a lot of the women and men lost a lot of that sort of way of being, of allowing things to be enjoy, allowing things to be as they were. And what we did was that we attached this drudgery, as I was saying before. We got to get it done. You know, I have to, like my mom, I have to shower you, feed you, find your clothes, clean the house, and help you with your homework all within the next hour and a half. We got to get it done. Hurry up. There's nothing else. Because tomorrow morning, I got to get up at 4:00 in the morning, get you ready, get you off to school, get you, you know, all these other things. And everything becomes this stuff where you just have to do stuff, you know. And one of my,
I love communities when I don't mean to cut you off, but
no, it's fine.
Plainfield, where I'm from, there's a large population from Latin America, various places in Latin America and South America and Central America, wherever. And they're literally everything, as soon as the, you know, spring breaks,
Yeah.
as soon as summer breaks, as soon as there's any little thing to celebrate, you hear the music going.
Yes.
See them barbecuing outside. And I'm like, yes, I love it.
There's the joy in all that stuff. Let's find it. I love that.
And it comes back to what you said earlier, that really requires a community that supports that.
Mm-hmm. It does. It does.
Yourself. I mean, you can't have a one-person party, but at some point it's going to become boring, right? You need some other people to be like, yes, let's get this, you know, let's dance out here. You know, that's energy and motion, you know.
Yes, that's so true. That's so very true. You do need all that stuff. And, you know, people that help support us to see and hold us in those visions and in those places of helping us find that space where we can move back into that again. You know, and I think that slowly, if we allow ourselves, because it all starts with the self, if we allow ourselves to find that space, we can eventually move back into that space and find people that will nurture that within us. But it's about finding that within ourselves first, so that we can allow those things to be part of our lives. Mm-hmm. And to integrate into our lives, and to integrate the things that we want to actually cultivate into our lives. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And always being conscious of that.
Mm-hmm.
Conscious of that. Flipping anything that you don't want in your life to turn it into, you know, realizing that, okay, I realize what I don't want. So what do I want? That's always,
right.
That question always comes up with clients for me.
Right.
What do you want?
Yeah.
Once you can clarify that and continue to clarify and refine that, you will live differently.
Yeah. And a lot of people, it's really interesting. A lot of people don't know what they want. So my thing is always, that's fine. So what don't you want?
Right.
By knowing what you don't want, mm-hmm. and living intentionally in that space of saying, I don't want this, mm-hmm. you will start to see, oh, okay, this does feel good though. Mm-hmm. And by taking out what doesn't feel right, you will move into what does feel right for you.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's I guess that's the simplest way to heal yourself. Mm-hmm. Right. And heal your children and really understand your children, really.
And understanding them
comes down to, because oftentimes when children don't want to do something, it's really sometimes it's defiance against you, but sometimes it's a soul level, like, nah, that I don't like that.
Exactly. And that when we learn how to, I think that one of the things that we also, in order to, you know, help heal our children while we're healing ourselves, is to really be conscious, like 100% conscious as much as possible of the fact that they are who they are, and to allow them 100% to be that person. Because what we have been taught to do, and what we do, is that we say, no, that's not okay. I don't like that part of you, or I don't like that you do that, or I don't like this thing, or I don't like that thing, or let me polish this, let me polish that. And what we do is that we start changing them, and we change them to, and this is what, you know, it goes into what you were saying before, like when the kids start getting older and then they don't have the connection anymore. It happens in this space. It happens because it's too hard for us to stop, to allow them to be who they are. So we start polishing, and we start forcing, and we start changing, and we start correcting and doing all these other things. And then we remove from them the essence of who they are. And then here they are angry, and nobody, you know, it's like, when I let you be who you are and I allow you to be who you are and I heal myself enough to let you be who you are, we can both grow together.
Mm-hmm.
But when one of us is not allowing the other one, this is where all this other dirty stuff comes in and starts to make the relationship something that it wasn't intended to be. You know, and it's by healing, by allowing them to be who they are and healing ourselves in that process. So it's like, you know, one of the things that I like to tell my clients is that it's a continual like symbiotic process where it's like both you and me are both working together to free ourselves from things. But in order for me to free you or to allow yourself to come and free, I have to heal my junk that was given to me through all these other things that we were talking about earlier, so that I can allow you to be who you are. And the only way I can allow you to be who you are is by me removing from myself what told me that you can't be what you are.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And this starts off. Say that again?
I said that is the essence of healing, you know, being who you are.
Being who you are. And when we remove that from our children, because it's hard for us to be aware, it's hard for us to face, it's hard for us to allow and release and then change, we're continuing these cycles of hurt and broken and damage and repression and guilt and resentment. And this is what we do essentially. It's harder in the beginning. And I've said this to many clients. It's harder in the beginning to deal with this stuff. But if you don't allow this stuff to be healed and to move through in the beginning, moment by moment, time by time, deviation by deviation, and whatever, the culmination of it at the end is just so much more.
It is.
Like you're going to deal with it now, or you're going to deal with it later. You're still going to deal with it.
Right. And when you deal with it later, it's like you're going to kick yourself. It's going to take more time or it may be harder for you to forgive yourself. It has accumulated more in your subconscious.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So that now you have all these experiences in your subconscious that has been created.
Yes.
And going into the metaphysical part of it, that, healing that throat chakra and healing yourself so you can communicate what it is that you're feeling and thinking at any moment is so critical, because a lot of us won't even say, I don't want to do that.
Right.
Because we're forcing ourselves based on what the societal perception is of what we should do.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So we force ourselves. It's like force feeding ourselves when we know we want to eat.
Exactly. And we continue. And, the saddest part is that we don't even allow ourselves to get to the place where we question these things anymore. Like we don't question them. I read something silly, like maybe not, but a few years ago, where these people were talking about how like the grandmother used to cut like a meatloaf or something like that to put it in a pan, and like the mother used to cut it, and she got to the point that she was like, why are we doing this?
I read that same thing. Yes.
Did you? Like generation after generation, they would cut it and put it somewhere, put it somewhere. So when she finally asked, it was like, well, why do we cut it? And the grandma was like, oh, because I had a small pan where it wouldn't fit. But nobody thought to ask.
Exactly.
It just continued.
Exactly. It was just innovation at the moment. It's not something that needs to continue forever.
Exactly. But we are continuing it forever.
Right.
And it's funny because when you stop and you think back, and our children, are they our best teachers? Our children are fantastic with poking that hurt. They poke it. They poke it, and then this, of course, this isn't physical poking. Like this is like energetic poking. This is emotional poking at its best. Emotional poking at its best. Right. They will do something that will irritate the hell out of you, and you're like, why the fudge are you freaking doing that? Didn't I tell you 5,000 times to stop? But never do we stop to question ourselves. Well, why is this kid doing this? Well, why am I angry that you're doing this? Well, why is this pissing me off? Well, why am I not understanding you? Like we never stop. to get to these places. We just auto reaction comes in, boom. Didn't I tell you to stop that 5,000 times ago already? Like, stop it. But we don't question. And one of the things that I will say, it's easier for me, I suppose, because my children are homeschooled, so they're with me all the time. Yeah. And my children don't have the model, which is double. Thank you. They don't have the model of other people for me to say, oh, they learned that somewhere else. Like, no. Right. Everything is here, so I know that everything is here. And everything that happens or that, they do, it's either through me or dad, or through something that they've consumed on social media or something like that. Or not social media, because they cannot have social media accounts. They're too young. But like YouTube or something like that, or watching videos or something, so it's like everything that happens, I have to sit and be the mirror for that stuff and be like, okay, why are we doing this right now? Where is this coming from?
And that's a lot I think that right there is a lot for a lot of women and mothers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because even if they are going outside into the world, you are still their, what's the word I'm looking for? Like their primary energetic source.
Yes.
Right. And so, I think that becomes, triggering for a lot of women.
Yes, it is.
Mothers, fathers, even though I don't deal with fathers, but all of this stuff still, applies to them as well in a lot of ways. It's still triggering. Hello?
Oh, no, I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me now? Oh, hello? Hello? Hello?
There we are.
Okay, I was just about to send you a message. So yeah, it's very triggering.
Yes, it is.
A lot of women to have to deal with this conversation.
Yes, it is.
Because they are like, well, I'm to blame or what? I'm to blame. Good job. Drink some more water. Am I to blame for everything? Like, what does this look like? No, right. You're not to blame for every single thing. Right. It's just that you have to be aware and keep the conversation flowing. You can't,
right.
We have to get to the point where we're not so triggered or not so sensitive or not so egoistical that we can't have a conversation about what is going on. That is where the intergenerational healing happens.
Yes.
Talking about things. And, we grow up in families a lot of times where things are so buried under, it's like we know, so we go to family reunions and we know that Uncle John is, he ain't right type thing.
Right.
That conversation.
That's
we
true.
don't have the conversation. Everybody's just kind of like,
he's that one.
Right. Or let it work out itself,
Right. And that's where a lot of that stuff, that's so very true. And, I work with someone who pretty much, who was, abused by someone in her family. And it's like, oh, well, let's just sweep that under the rug. Let's sweep that under the carpet. Like we don't discuss these things. And it's like, this is where a lot of this hurt and trauma comes from. The fact that things are not dealt with, the fact that things are not brought to the light, the fact that things aren't allowed to discuss. And, I will say that it comes, I have realized that it comes 100% directly from, as I said before, lack of emotional understanding and a lack of understanding the process of when things come up, because we don't understand that process. Like we, as human beings, we have been taught that process. As I said, we're taught to just do. We're not taught to feel. We're not taught to emote. We are taught to do. So when all of these things start to come up, the vast majority of us are not in spaces where we can actually let these things come up for healing. So we push them down and we bury them and we throw them away, which is why our children are so important in these spaces, because when we allow them to be who they are and we allow them the right to speak freely and to live their truths, they bring up those things that need to be changed. They bring up those things that need healing, and it's like, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, this is where things like therapy, having coaches like yourself, like myself, and many other, other coaches that specifically, understand these issues and specifically can, help you just again, talk it out. I think a lot of times we have capacity to handle it and deal it, but we don't express anything.
We don't express anything.
Counseling is so critical. A lot of us culturally don't do counseling. Let me just say, people of color particularly don't do counseling. And I think that it's kind of a mixture of, we don't trust the system of therapy and counseling, and that we have a history of, being able to go to our elders, or being able to go to our community members or spiritualists in our communities to deal with these things. And so we have to either connect back to that spiritual side, or go ahead and find that therapist or coach or whatever, or both.
Both. Yeah. I've had 100%. I agree with you. And I have had clients who work with me and a therapist and, a psychologist, and they work. And I think it's time for us to start taking that into our own spheres and saying, no, I need this healing. And, I didn't say in the beginning, I probably should have, I am a channel. I do bring in spirit. So one of the things that I do is that I bring in the higher selves of generations, children, mothers, fathers. I bring in timelines. I bring to people the energies of what they're working with, so that they can understand these things and we can move into working through them. This is what I do at core. So I help mothers align, but this is how I myself, through Soul Centered Mama, help mothers align. And I've had many, many, many clients where it's like in their faces, and it's like, well, you're the one who came here to heal this stuff. And what I have found in the larger scope is that those who are supposed to be our elders have been broken. They don't know how to deal with this stuff. They know how to cover it, and they know how to push it away. So we are the ones who are feeling it, and we are the ones who are bringing it up in our own ways, and our children are the ones who are triggering it for us so that we can feel it and heal it. And there's a very deep energy at work when it comes to the power of the generations and the healing that has to happen. And I think it's very crucial for people to understand this. They are children. They are not coming to do this stuff to hurt us, to drive us crazy. They're coming to help us heal it, because they are the only ones who can press those buttons and press our hurts and make us force our triggers, and force those things to come up. Because the elders are, like I said before, the elders are hurt. The elders are in pain. The elders don't know how to be elders. And as just speaking in general terms, our society doesn't even value them anymore. We take our elders and we throw them in homes. We throw them in homes. So the people that we're supposed to go to, and it's like, I feel, it's funny, I was telling my husband this yesterday or something like that. We are a society of blind people just trying to feel our ways in the dark. And it's not working anymore. It's not working. The vast majority of us are in pain, and we don't understand why. And it comes from us, as I said before, the fact that a lot of our awareness, the fact that our understanding of ourselves, our emotional understanding, the deep understanding of this healing process is not given to us. We're walking around blind. And the people that are supposed to be leading us, the ones who are supposed to say, my grandmother, who's, she's on the other side now. My grandmother used to say in Spanish, old people don't know because we're old. We know because we were wise. We know because we've lived. We've already been there, done that. But the problem is that with so many of them, their hurts are not allowed to be transmuted. And what they do is that they hold it. our whys can't lead us because they have the pain that was given to them. You know, one of the things I have, for instance, I have daughters and sons. I have both, you know, and my husband comes from a line of warriors. And my sons naturally, and this is something that I won't even go to, but, you know, in their DNA, they come from warrior lines. And they are triggered in very deep ways when they see things of that nature, of things that are like warriors or people doing the haka, or, you know, things like that, where you know that it comes from lines of warriors. And there's so many times that I've wanted to take my sons to like vets so that they can learn from vets and learn from those stories of vets, and so that they can tell them, because I know that my sons are naturally called to this line. And they will not open up. They won't share their stories. Vets, because, and I understand that, you know, vets have all that trauma of the stuff that they've gone through, but because there is no healing in place for them, we shut them up and throw them somewhere. The younger ones can't learn from them. They can't learn from them.
Yeah,
you know?
They've been taught that their stories are the perception of their story is all pain. Right?
It's all unhealed pain.
The perception of the story is all pain. That's the reason why a lot of us don't speak out of things that we feel.
Yes.
Because that perception, and we don't allow it to go through our bodies. And I say this all the time in indigenous cultures, you know, it's commonplace. So for example, in South America, ayahuasca has become very popular right now.
Yes.
We're getting into the deeper spiritual aspects of this, obviously. So
yeah.
Clearly it has transitioned, but you know, that's just a common a friend of mine, he's a shaman, and he does, you know, those rituals all the time. And he, you know, he's like, it's common. Like when I was introduced to it, I was just walking with a friend and he was like, oh, let's go to my house. We're having a party. And that was the party. Like people were taking ayahuasca so that they can, you know, release themselves.
Right. And they can become,
you know, whatever
free
subconscious things that happened within that year or whatever. It was like a yearly, just something that happened.
Right.
You know, and I think, again, we have been removed from these rituals.
Yes.
That are there to, you know, the drumming, the dancing,
right,
you know,
the
all
energy,
that
pure energy movement, the pure movement of the energy that is stuck within us.
Yes.
You know, that stuff is what's like what we're holding on to, because we don't know how to process it. We don't know how to release it. We don't know how to allow it to move, you know, and it's like, I tell people all the time, emotion is just energy in motion. When we learn how to move that energy through us and not hold it, we can take those traumas and that pain and that hurt, and we can move it and then use it to help someone else.
Exactly.
That's the purpose of it.
Exactly.
You know,
and there's many ways to do it, and it doesn't have to look, it's ritual is in everything that we do, and we can either do a ritual that is going to continue to keep us in a cycle of stuck and hurt and pain, or we can do something that's going to move the energy in a positive way. Drawing, writing, dancing, cooking, whatever it is that you love. I feel like that is what helps your energy. I love to travel, so for me, not traveling is like death to my spirit. Right?
Yes.
So
it's funny, like everyone has a different thing that they use in order for them to release and come back to center, you know, and mine is like, I need brain time. I'm very mental. I need time in my mind. I need time without people like being in my mind, like asking me questions. Like I have 5 kids, so that's hard, but yeah, I need it. I need that for my sanity. I need time by myself. I crave solitude, you know, and my husband he's like workout guy. My husband needs physical activity in order for him to feel balanced. There are people, like you said, people that cook. There are people that desire to be in nature very much. There are people that like to dance. There are people that like to sing. And it's all about just understanding what's yours and what works for you and doing that like constantly, so that you can continue to center yourself, so that you can, as your brand is evolve, so that you can evolve, and you can evolve to a point where you're allowing the healing for yourself and your children to happen.
That is the
Because if we,
self-care. Yes.
yes, it is the ultimate self-care. And until we get to those places where we're doing those things consistently, we're just going to keep running back to those pain and hurt stories. We're going to keep running back to the auto reactions. We're going to keep running back to the things that don't feel good, that we know don't feel good. And we're going to keep pushing them away and saying, well, that's just there, because we don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that, this journey of evolution it doesn't have to be difficult. It really doesn't. And the majority of it is letting go.
That's so important.
Being that I say
Yeah.
it all the time. The majority of what you need to do is to
let go. Yeah. And letting go is not quitting.
It's not quitting. No,
it's not quitting.
It's not saying I give up.
Yep. It's surrendering.
It's surrendering and being like, you know what? Let the universe take this.
Yes.
Process it and bring back the goodness to me so that I can use it for my ultimate.
Use it. Exactly.
And that's it.
Yep. And one thing that I have found, and I'll say this intentionally for anyone out there who is listening to this and feels any kind of urging or, soul calls or anything like that, I want them to know, and this is coming from my intuitive space, that there are those out there of us whose purpose is to come here and do that work. So if you're listening to this, you're probably one of those people. You're not crazy. You're not, there's nothing wrong with you. It's your purpose to question things and understand, because there is a whole generation of us who is like, that's enough. I'm done with this. I can't deal with that lifestyle anymore. And our purpose is to allow these things to move through so that we can show the difference to other people around us. And it's not supposed to be, like something that we take and we hide because we're the crazy ones. No, we're supposed to be the different ones, because it is our job to show them what our healing has looked like, so we can show it to those in our tribes, and that's something that I've picked up energetically over the last year or two. The majority of us went away from our tribes because we weren't allowed to be who we were. And we were like, well, you know what? I can be who I am, or I can't do the things that I want, or you're hurting me, or you're making me feel bad. I'm just going to leave. Right. But, and I'm going to do me, and I'm going to do it away from you. And now we're being called to come back and live our truths out loud in front of those that are from our tribes, from our generational tribes, if you will.
And trust me when I tell you, it definitely frees people up to be who they are. Even older women, like the older women in my family be looking at me like, girl, you crazy, but I want to live like you. They going on trips, they traveling, they doing, they're not hung up on whether or not their house is clean to the
Exactly.
Listen, you transform others. It is that old age-old saying, you transform others by transforming yourself. You want to change the world, change yourself.
Change yourself, exactly. And it's funny because my mom, and I think this is really, my mom is one of those old, like stubborn, I see my way and that's just the way that it is. And it's just who she is. She's always been like that. And a few days ago, I was talking to her and we were having a conversation about something and something about control, because one of the things that I surrendered a long time was control. I was modeled to be controlling. And when I said one of those things that I faced, that where I started off years ago, when my daughter was 4, my oldest one, was control. The fact that I was very controlling. And it was one of those things that I was like, okay, I got to put this down. And it's taken me years. So we were having a conversation, my mom and I, about this stuff. And, the healing that I've been doing, my daughter's been the benefactor of it. And my mother has been watching in the background. And a few days ago, we were having a conversation and I was telling her all this stuff. And I was saying, Mom, the reason why all of these things are happening is because you still have this control thing where you want to control everything around you. And by the end of the conversation, she goes, you know what? You make a lot of sense. And my mom has never said anything like this to me. a lot of sense because again, at the end of the day, it's her way, right? And
Mhm.
she goes, I think, because I had to go and I had to hang up, and she says, I think I'm going to call you again so we can keep talking about this because the stuff that you were saying makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
And like that blew my mind. I was like, whoa, lady, really? You're listening to me? Like, whoa, I'm saying something for you. And it's like, again, like you said, the older ones are now starting to come in. Like I was called all kinds of crazy when I decided to homeschool my kids. They were like, "What? You're not throwing them in institutions?" I was like, "Nope, I'm not." And they were like, "Oh, this chick is crazy." When I decided to stop hitting my kids because in our cultures,
Girl,
that's
you
how
don't
you
got to tell
discipline,
me. I already
right?
know.
Like when I told them, I said, "I'm not hitting my kids." What? How you gonna control them? How you gonna get them to listen? Like they're doing fine now,
Right.
but all of these things was like, oh my God, Violet is crazy. Look, Violet's gonna raise wolves. They're gonna be wolves, all of them. They're gonna be feral.
Mhm. Mhm.
And now after all of these years, like, now it's getting to the point where they're like, oh, I get it now. But I
Mhm.
had to go out against it and purposefully and defiantly live my truth
Mhm.
with them showing me the way.
Mhm.
So yes,
Yeah.
100%.
I'm thankful that we are living in the age where this is happening.
Yes, me
Because
too.
I can't blame or fault my foremothers because they lived in a certain situation and a mindset,
Yes.
and we're seeing this unraveling um of things now, and we're seeing
Yes.
how things are changing and things are moving back into the feminine energy of that is freedom. Honestly, that
It
is
is freedom.
not being afraid of chaos or the darkness
Yeah.
of the unknown, and being playful and being free
Yes.
and all of that other stuff. And so I'm thankful that is happening, and there's
It is where we are.
awakening. Yes,
Being ultimately free to be ourselves.
absolutely. Which I,
And
I don't see how being some other way is even thought to be sustainable, because it could.
right.
Seriously, it just couldn't be.
You're like, why'd that even happen?
But what I realized too is that a certain image is sold of conformity and compliance. But when you look at
Yes.
to the masses, but when you look at people who we consider to be quote unquote successful, or having certain things that a lot of us aspire to have,
Hmm.
or people who are or just living their lives, they express themselves through being playful and loving, and um,
Yes.
being themselves. And I always use the example of Richard Branson, because I always not celebrate, but I always research these people who are like billionaires and things like that. I'm
Yes.
always curious about that mindset, to
Right.
have all of this stuff at your disposal and how you are as a person.
Right. Right.
And a lot of these people are just carefree.
Yes.
They do what they want.
They do what they
They
want.
bring their ideas to the forefront and see what happens, without thought of, am I going to fail? Am I going to, they live life joyously.
Yes, they
They
do.
really do. A lot of
They
them
do.
anyway. And
It's true. They do.
yeah, and that's why I say, you can choose to live that way if you want to.
Right.
You can.
And it's a lot of it I've learned because I like to do the same thing because I think that it's important for us to step out of our comfort zone and say, rather than closing ourselves off and judging and criticizing, like I said before, and pointing fingers at these things, it's important for us to see these things and say, well, let me understand a different point of view. Let me
Mm-hmm.
understand a different way of being. Let me just research. But what we do instead is that we get stuck on our own perception, and then we like stay there, right? And because it's comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these people that do live these lifestyles, that's what they do. One of the things, not every, but that's not the only thing, but one of the things that they do is exactly that. They allow themselves to question. They allow themselves to criticize themselves. They allow themselves the the right, I'll say, to have a different and adopt a different opinion. They allow themselves change. They
Mm-hmm.
don't stay stuck.
Mm-hmm.
If one thing, quote unquote, like we are so caught up in failure because we're trying to be something, whatever that looks like, that when something that looks like failure comes up, like a lot of us fold there. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. I've been there more times than I can count. But what they do is that they see failure as something else, and they say, okay, I am not going to live there. I'm going to just look for another door, and that comes to, or built one, exactly. Or I'm just going to demolish the whole structure, and what that circles back into what I was saying before, where it's like, we don't allow ourselves that stuff. We guilt ourselves. We get stuck on ourselves when these things that do feel bad that our children are presenting to us, and we criticize ourselves. We get down on ourselves. We feel bad about ourselves because we've been taught that one way is the way it has to be. So when things like failure, judgment, guilt, the reality that the way we've been doing it for so long isn't working, rather than saying, oh, okay, so me beating you to submission isn't working, let me look for another way. What we do instead is that we hold on to it. We say, wait a minute, but that's the way it's always been done. Wait a minute, but I'm doing that because you weren't listening, or I'm doing that because this, that, and that's just, my extreme example. But what these people do instead is that they say, oh, well, that's not working. Let me find another way to get you to listen. Rather than saying, I'm going to stick with my way, but it's because we are feeling down on ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Down on ourselves is what takes the playfulness out of life. And that
it does.
Being able to see different viewpoints and not seeing things that aren't in order as chaotic, because it's
exactly,
it's just, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Another way to create and recreate and reset boundaries, and this universe is expansive.
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
We have to break out of, and I have so many theories about why certain things happen in the world the way it is right now, but
honey, that's a good conversation for another time.
Yeah, so that we can see that the boundaries are limitless. It just depends on what it is that we not to say that there aren't consequences to certain bounds that we take, because when it comes to certain things like nature, Mother Earth, and things like that, we need to understand some things.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's another conversation. But I do relate that mishandling of Mother Nature, and I've been saying this for years.
Yes,
with the mishandling of the feminine and the woman. Principle and all of those things, and so we have to understand that we cannot destroy those two things. They're what
exactly
us going.
Ooh, that's like, that just brings back to Moana. I love me some Moana.
Oh my God, don't get me started on Moana. Okay, if I start about my daughter gonna come in here and be like, Mom, are you serious? Because I'm gonna watch this movie about 511 times.
It's amazing, the stuff, like there's so many layers of what's going on in that cartoon. Like, and we just oh, it's just a pretty cartoon. Ooh, we need to pay attention.
And Coco. I'm like, let me find out Disney getting their life together.
Yes, they are. Coco is amazing, right?
Yeah,
they really are. They are.
And these are great movies to watch and talk to children about certain things.
Yes,
it really is, to see how they view it. Number one, but then also talk to them in a context about it. And it's not going to be perfect. I don't have a perfect conversation or reels to talk to you, but it's just a great way to have that conversation with your children.
A conversation with your children, right?
Who they are, and holding them to task, holding yourself to task for honoring yourself for who you are, and honoring, you know what I'm saying, your dreams and your interests and passions. Okay.
And finding yourself in that space and in that line, and seeing where it came from, and understanding what they did with it and how that's affecting you as a result, and just all of these other multi-layered things that come from those things. And I totally feel you. Like, Disney's just totally getting their act together. Like, we can start watching those things again.
Okay, exactly. Okay, even though we went to Disney recently, but this is another conversation. Let me not be all up on this. But I'm recording here. Okay,
that's so funny.
this is what happened when mamas get together. See, this is why y'all need to have your community of mamas around.
Have your community. That's so
another
true.
thing. When I can't deal with certain things, I literally call on other women. I'll be like, I can't do it. Can you talk to Newbie about that? Because I just can't. And I'm very honest about it.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I call like one of my first go-to is my sister, and I call my sister, Carol, I need your help today. I need you to help me from climbing up 5 walls. Please help me. And I'm just like, or just stay on text with me. Just text with me. It's just help me stay grounded.
Exactly. That's part of releasing that emotional burden, man.
Yeah, we need each other. We do.
Yeah. So your sisters, your mamas around and have heart-to-heart conversations. Stop fronting.
That's so true. That's so true. Like, we that's, oh my gosh, we hold back so much because of what we perceive or what we think, or being realistic. Just because the people around us may not be the supportive people we need, we hold back a lot. And we hold back things that at the end of the day, when we do open up, the other person's like, oh, me too. Like, oh, let me tell you about how much me too, And it's just like, we need to start opening up these avenues and having real conversations about what these things are, what they feel like. And that's the only way we're going to continue to heal ourselves so that we can heal our kids, is by having these conversations. I remember when my twins were like babies. They were like 7 months old, 6, 7 months old. And my daughters were 3 and 4 because they were born so close together. And I had one of my cousins came to my house and she goes, what do you do when it starts to feel like a lot? And I told her, I said, honestly, I go into the bathroom and I cry and scream into towels. And the face that she gave me was like, oh my God, you poor thing. Like, can I hug you 7 times? But it was just my truth at that moment. Like, it was just really hard. My kids were really small. They were not sleeping. They were under 4, all of them. And in that moment, like, she got me. Like, nothing happened after that because, I'm the misfit. So
people often don't know what to do with other people's emotional stuff because they don't know what to do with their own emotional stuff.
Exactly. But those are things that we have to start being honest with, instead of saying, well, I expect you to have it all together. It's like, oh man, that really sucks. And yeah, that's an emotional time and that hurts. And it's the truth, rather than making us feel like, oh, I have to pretend that I have it all together. That's unrealistic.
Yep. I totally agree.
Being okay with ourselves. Yeah.
Violet, how can people connect with you and contact you if they want any services, anything like that? How can they connect with you?
They can go to my website, which is soulcenteredmama.com, or they can just find me on Facebook. Or I have an Instagram, which is Soul Centered Mama. Also, it's the same one, Soul Centered Mama. But the best bet is through my website, and just send me an email through soulcenteredmama.com.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, Violet is amazing, and, don't feel like you need to pull yourself away from, gathering this kind of support, because that's what it is. Support in your own evolution, your own journey.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you need. It's fine. We all needed it.
We all need it. We all need support. We all
need it. We all needed it. We all continuously need it.
Yes.
And, trust me, being on the other side of being free is so worth it.
It really is. It is. It's like life takes a whole new different meaning.
Whole different meaning. Like, you wake up different. You function your day different. You talk different.
You behave with your kids, like your auto reactions are different, and you come from a different place. You question you move in the world in a completely different way.
Even your mate.
Yes.
My interaction with my mate, and even just with relationships, period.
Yes. Period.
Not coming from a place of being triggered, but instead coming from a place of being empowered. So much different.
It is. It really is. It literally colors your entire world, and it it makes everything else just brighter.
And on that note, we are going to get out of here because connect with Violet on soulcenteredmama.com or on Facebook as Violet Moon, or page on Facebook, Soul Center Mama, or Instagram. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And sharing your wisdom, your insights, your beautiful energy. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we know that some more mamas are going to be well informed and healed today because of your information and conversation.
Thank you.
So, all right, my mommies evolving. Enjoy and have a beautiful, beautiful day.
Bye.
Did you like that? I know it was as informative for you as it was for me. Look, this is a process for all of us. And to keep this process going, I would love to invite you to donate to our podcast. We want to continue to give you high-level content, beautiful content that enlightens and inspires and broadens your vision to elevate you and evolve. So please feel free to go to the podcast page at anchor.fm/Mommy Matters. We would love to hear your questions and comments as well, so that we can discuss them in future podcasts. And you can email that to momevolve@gmail.com. You can also visit the website and send your comments there. www.mommyevolve.com. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Peace and love.